This is the perfect outcome for the 49ers. Just days removed from George Kittle's Achilles tear, they get positive news on the injury status of their best player, as well as other injury updates that can really boost the morale and performance of this team going into the divisional round. We're going to break that all down for you on this episode of Niners Digest. My name is Ethan Galbraith. Thank you so much for tuning in, especially now because the Niners are still in the playoffs, and I really think they have a chance to go and upset Seattle this coming weekend because we got some major news in terms of injury updates for the 49ers. And for once, they're positive. We're going to break that all down for you. But before we get into these updates, this video is brought to you by Kalshi. When you use code DIGESTNFL after downloading Kalshi using the link below, you'll get $20 after trading your first 100. Now, Kalshi is the largest prediction market in the United States, and on the platform, you can trade yes or no on real-world events, of course, including sports. Whether you're in California, Texas, New York, Kalshi is live in all 50 states. And for sports fans, this means you can trade yes or no on player performances, game outcomes, playoff chances, all on a regulated market where you can cash out at any time. Take the 49ers, for example. They're coming in as major underdogs to the Seattle Seahawks this weekend. But if you think they can pull off another upset this time in Seattle, you can trade yes or no on that. What about the race for the NFC Championship? The Niners are major underdogs. They're far from being the favorites. But if you think they can keep going on this run and win the NFC crown, you can trade yes or no on that as well. Make sure to get your $20 when downloading Kalshi using the link below and using code DIGESTNFL. Thank you again to Kalshi for sponsoring this video. Fred Warner. Those are the two words. I got to talk more about it, of course, but Fred Warner is coming back. Not this week, most likely, but his return is inevitable, it seems like at this point. Ian Rappaport announced today that the Niners are opening the practice window for Fred Warner. It happened today. This is official. Now, I'm saying it like this because I don't know if Niners fans, myself included, actually think that this day would come. Not because Fred Warner wasn't going to be healthy enough to actually come back at a crazy fast time. But there were questions if the Niners were going to still be in a position to keep playing football for Fred Warner to come back and then therefore make an impact. And yet the Niners have continued to hold up their end of this somewhat bargain, which is if they keep winning, inevitably Fred Warner's going to possibly be there to return 100% ready to play and give it his all. This is the best player on this team, and he's the best linebacker in football, and he's one of, if not the best football players in the NFL. So for him to just be on the field for practice this week is huge. I do think that while he's probably not going to play this coming weekend versus Seattle, you would love to have him up there, but it's likely that he's not going to be available. He didn't even practice fully today. It was a limited practice for him. Just having Fred Warner on that field. Think about where Niners fans were in October when Fred Warner suffered his ankle injury. I'll tell you where I was. I was watching the game versus Tampa Bay, and I thought, this team can't win a Super Bowl without Fred Warner. I don't even know how far they'll be able to go in the playoffs, or can they even make the playoffs without Fred Warner. All the other injuries aside, those are all super crucial injuries as well. But Fred Warner is the centerpiece. This is the 49ers. No discredit to CMC, George Kittle, Brock Purdy, Nick Bosa, all the other players that have dealt with injuries. Fred Warner is the San Francisco 49ers. And nobody knew if he was going to come back. Nobody would have been surprised if he couldn't come back this year, because who knew how long the Niners season was going to be after all. And yet, he's back. He's back on the practice field, which is huge. And just, again, he's only played in a handful of games this year, but he has been his usual self in terms of his production as a linebacker and being, the captain of this Niners defense. So for him to be able to come back is going to be crucial. And I think that people are remaining cautiously optimistic. Niners players have been very cautious about all of this, of course. And as well as Kyle Shanahan. There's no secret about it. He was asked about this today, and yes, Fred Warner, his practice window was open, but he said, quote, "We're not doing too much, so he'll walk through out there with us today and things like that, but hoping he can be ready for next week." So not even the anticipation is that he will not be ready for this coming week versus Seattle. But that was already in the game plan. And with Eric Kendricks and Garrett Wallow's performance this past weekend in Philadelphia, you don't need to rely on Fred Warner to come back. Of course, your ceiling gets a lot higher with Fred Warner out there. But Eric Kendricks and Garrett Wallow proved that they can hold their own this past weekend in a hostile environment in Philadelphia. And they're going to be walking into another hostile environment this coming Saturday versus the Seattle Seahawks. So Fred Warner's not going to be out there, but that's huge to have him ready on the practice field, because now you have two huge veteran presence, a major veteran presence because of Fred Warner and Eric Kendricks now on that practice field. The energy just shifts with Fred Warner out there. There's no secret about it. And this is important that it happens on this day as well, because also today, the Niners officially placed George Kittle on the IR. He is scheduled to have his Achilles surgery this week, so praying for the best, hope everything goes well with his surgery and the beginning of his recovery process. But for George Kittle to suffer such a gruesome injury just a few days ago and then be placed on IR and go into surgery later this week, but for Fred Warner to have his practice window open the same week is such a morale boost, because yes, the team is feeling bad for George and it's a huge loss to lose Kittle, but now you have Fred Warner coming back. That is massive. And yes, he's not going to play, like I've said multiple times, but just having your captain out there, having another captain, you've lost so many important players. You've lost all of your important players at some point in time. Nick Bosa is done for the season. You've missed Trent Williams for at least a game. Brock Purdy's missed multiple weeks. Brandon Ayuk hasn't been there all season. Jawan Jennings has missed multiple games. Ricky Pearsall's missed multiple. I could go on and on. And of course, Fred Warner's missed multiple games. He's missed months. And now he's back on the practice field. That is just, I can't imagine how big of a morale boost that is for the team, how much the energy shifts. And when you're going against the number one seed Seattle Seahawks, you need that. You're going into a hostile environment. Yes, this is not an unfamiliar environment. The Niners won there in week 1 earlier this year. But anybody will tell you that these two teams are not the same that they were back in September. And I'll agree with that as well. But moving forward, as well as Fred Warner's practice window being open and him being back on the field, the Niners also got some other positive news, which is that Ricky Pearsall was practicing today in a limited fashion, but after missing 2 games, this is a positive sign. The Niners, while the offense did perform overall pretty well this past weekend in Philadelphia, Ricky Pearsall was missed. So having him back out there is going to be huge, or just the idea of having him out there. But being back at practice, even in a limited fashion, that's good progression. I think that is something that the Niners fans want to keep an eye on. And of course, none of this is as relevant if the Niners lose this Saturday in Seattle, especially for Fred Warner, or if Ricky Pearsall isn't good to go this week, but if he's good to go for a hypothetical NFC Championship game. It doesn't matter if they don't win on Saturday, but I'm just saying having them around back in the building on the field is huge. And the Niners also got another major linebacker update, which is that linebacker D. Winters returned to practice in a limited capacity. So, again, you're starting to bring some important guys back into the building. The D. Winters timeline is still up in the air, but again, without D. Winters, without Fred Warner, without Tatum Bethune, the linebacker core held it down in Philadelphia. Garrett Wallow, Eric Kendricks, Curtis Robinson, they all played pretty good football. Eric Kendricks, of course, had the final play on 4th down to seal the victory. So the Niners are slowly but surely getting healthier. Now, at this point, of course, it's not that this is a major investment for this season, because, of course, again, if you lose in Seattle this weekend, the season's over. Then everybody can recover. But with this squad specifically, they've been so resilient. They just don't go away. I said that in my last video, and I'll say it again. They just don't go away. In the best way possible for Niners fans, of course. So to have guys coming back, even just on the practice field, having them out there is a big deal, because not everybody's available to come back yet. The other news is that Nick Martin remains in concussion protocol and will stay on the IR. So his return doesn't seem likely for the rest of the season. But to have your other linebackers, the ones that you have brought in to replace your injured players, and they've stepped up to the plate and played well, and now to have some of your original linebackers returning, it's all just adding up to be a really positive sign. So only time will tell about, how much of an impact these players coming back to practice actually has. But Fred Warner's return is, I can't state enough how impactful that is. He's not even going to play on Saturday, but most likely, according to Kyle Shanahan. But my final thoughts are this. The Niners have been through so much. And I mentioned previously how They just keep winning. There's a light at the end of the tunnel, which is Fred Warner's return. Well, now the light is getting brighter, and he might not play this coming weekend versus Seattle, but he's on the field again. And that is, considering the injury that he sustained, how short of a time ago it was, and everything else the Niners as a team have been through, that is insane. But then again, this whole season's been insane. And the Niners are still in the playoffs with a chance to keep winning. So we'll keep you all updated, of course, on any future injury updates, as well as more an analysis into what this Niners Seahawks game, round 3, the trilogy, is going to look like, because each team has a win, both on the road, might I add, and now we get to finally resolve who's coming out on top for this season. But thank you again so much for watching. My name is Ethan Galbraith, and we will see you again in the next video.